Welcome back to the Have Not Room. I'm Ben, and I'm joined here this week by Brian after a bit of a hiatus to talk about a week of Big Brother Canada 9 that might not end up mattering, ending with a double eviction that was fake, where we might end up seeing the final 6 HOH leaving in 6th place, followed by speculation for a week that we are not going to be able to actually watch. What do you think, Brian? You've been gone for a while, and you come back in a wild time.
Yeah, much like Jed, probably. I've returned to help at the last minute, and yeah, I mean, what an interesting situation this fake double eviction is. I don't hate it, I guess, but I don't like that we didn't find out who stayed. Is that fair to say?
No, that's definitely fair. I'd say that's the normative opinion at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Before we get into this week, is there anything you want to talk about from the weeks that you missed? Just before we dive into the craziness of
when was I
this.
here last? Josh was still in the house, probably.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that, but I think maybe the week before Victoria was invisible HOH.
Maybe.
So the Kyle eviction week, I think, might have been the last time you were here.
It's possible. The real fans will have to go back and check.
Yeah.
So a lot has happened, obviously, since I've been gone. Victoria has become one of my all-time favorite house guests from either versions that I've watched, U.S. or Canada. Really loved her. Was very sad to see her go. Big Brother Canada stole my idea and implemented it bad. It's fine. It's fine. You guys can use it again. That's for free, but maybe do it correctly next time. It's not a big deal. It's just like a great twist that kind of I felt like was biffed. It's whatever though. Let's see. Anything else? Yeah. I was kind of lukewarm on Beth until this week when she was very whiny about facing the first bit of adversity she's had this entire season, and I'm all out on her. Kiefer.
How dare you, Brian? That's my winner pick.
I know. I was about to. My winner pick. He looked dead in the water for a little bit there. He managed to guilt his alliance into keeping him, which I guess is fair play, right? It's Big Brother. I was fair and loving Big Brother, so that was good. And now he looks like he's in an okay position. Potentially he could win. The jury seems to like him. The 3 jury members that are there anyways seem to like him very, very much. What else? Oh, I was surprised that the jury was so hard on Jed. When I was watching it, I was like, oh, Jed's probably like in the pole position to win this game. And then the jury was like, man, fuck that guy. He has an unbelievable ego. And then they were also like, fuck Beth, but we respect her game. So that wasn't what I was expecting, to be honest. Anything else? Kyle, it's too bad that you got out, but at least you got to play when you weren't going to play at first. So, you got to take that, right? Anything else big that I'm not remembering? Tino, she went from like one of the all-time great players in Big Brother history to kind of like a quiet exit in my opinion, which was surprising. And other than that, my winner pick's still in it, so I'm happy. I'm rooting for Kiefer, but we'll see what this twist does. Well, I mean, we won't see it because the feeds are down, but we'll see it on Monday.
Yeah, that's how dare you not ever mention Austin, legend of Big Brother Canada 9, in your little like recap there.
That's true.
I think you mentioned every other player on the season, except for Austin, who has contributed a phenomenal amount to the season overall.
That's true.
Really
I apologize. I'm sorry that her and Kyle didn't get to have a showmance in the house until they were on the block together. Very sad. Pulled on my heartstrings for sure. And that's about all I remember about Austin.
Yeah, that's probably more than most people do at this point. So, um, yeah, that's a good recap of the season. And now we're headed here into this final 6 week where we have some kind of like dramatic irony situation going on where us as the audience are watching the sauce fall apart this week and turn on each other and gaslight each other, while they don't know, but we know that with Jed being evicted this week, he's very likely to end up coming back in and is probably in the house as we speak and record this podcast right now.
Yeah, I wish we could know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We can't, though, because
Yeah.
those were decisions, Ben. I really want to hear your opinion on that decision.
You want to do that off the top here?
Let's do it. I mean,
all right.
They need to know.
Yeah, I already sent a tweet out about this, like right after the eviction episode, or like maybe a little bit later, last night on Thursday night. But yeah, it just doesn't make sense on any level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's the only reason that you could theoretically argue to turn the feeds off is like, oh, if we spoil who comes back, then it won't have, like, feedsters won't have a reason to watch on Monday. But literally the entire portion, like, other than double evictions, basically, every single thing that is going to be on the shows is spoiled to the live feeders ahead of time already. So we usually know who's getting evicted because it's very rare that there's a last minute flip. We already know what happens with the veto, what happens with nominations every single week, and still live feeders watch the episodes because there's diary room content. It's interesting to see how the narrative is going to be crafted. Like seeing the competitions play out, which is not something we see on the feeds, is very fun. There's a lot that can go into the live shows other than just like generic spoiler information, right?
Right.
Even if they don't want to end the episode proper with the competition, we'll get into that episode in general. I think the episode was incredibly rushed and really like thrown together. They spent 45 minutes, I feel like, on the first eviction, and they were like, oh, we have an entire other double eviction situation going on. And we're going to show an 8-minute jury segment for some godforsaken reason that definitely could have happened sometime next week, and not during a double eviction. And to have the double eviction take place where the comps were, like, in my opinion, very hard to follow. The HOH comp was kind of cringy. The veto comp, I literally did not even know was happening as I was watching it. It felt like one of those Survivor comps, like the untie the rope ones, but I didn't know who was in the lead. And then it was like a jump cut, and then Brayden won, and I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Good for Brayden. And then we get to like the climax of the episode, right, where we're gonna get to see one of Jed or Tara come back into the house, and save it for next time. And you're not going to see any of the fallout of a person re-entering the house, especially if Jed comes back into the house, but also Tara to a lesser extent, because she just got burned by Dre and Kiefer. But especially if Jed re-enters the house, after Ty and Kiefer in particular just like absolutely iced him this week in like the most brutal way possible, the fact that we're going to miss out on all of that drama and content and fallout and not be able to see any of it outside of a 40-minute edited content on Monday that's going to be like completely compressed because they also have to show the two competitions, the comeback competition and the HOH competition and the nomination ceremony. I'm sure they're going to do some kind of sponsored content in there. So there's going to be like 15 to 20 minutes of drama out of the 4 days of potential drama that we're missing. And this is like the one reason you do a twist like this, right? Like the whole point of a fake double eviction twist where somebody gets revolving door back into the game this late is so somebody can get brutally cut in like the most like vicious way possible, and then immediately come back in and like have to look into the face of their allies who just completely fucked them over and have been gaslighting them all week. That's like delicious content. And the fact that they were like, we're going to set this twist up to create this delicious content, and then, oh, you're going to see none of it. It's just like a huge slap in the face.
I agree. I 100% agree. Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? Is it because the COVID's bad and they need to limit the people at this, like, studio to, like, run the live feeds? What is happening?
See, that's the thing. Like, I mentioned this as well, that I speculated that maybe this weekend they needed staff off for whatever reason because, COVID has messed up their scheduling, has made running the live feeds and running production stuff a lot more difficult. So maybe this was a planned feed off or feed downage or whatever.
Or something, yeah.
And they manufactured this twist to, like, basically create an excuse for why they would shut the feeds off. Because the last time they shut the feeds off for an entire weekend, basically, which was the Invisible HOH week, they didn't say anything about it ahead of time. And there was really no, like, cogent reason. Like, they kind of were, like, vaguely implying that trying to hide the identity of the Invisible HOH was the reason. But they still did, like, a 2-hour feed leak or whatever, where it was immediately apparent that Victoria was the Invisible HOH. So, like, it wasn't even for that. Like, they didn't even accomplish that in that situation anyways. This might be tinfoil hatty. I think that this was a planned outage, and they created this twist, completely manufactured it, specifically to give themselves a reason to shut the feeds off. Because this is the only thing that makes sense to me. Like, there's nothing else that makes sense. And if that's the case, that's even worse. Because you're making a twist which is going to make the next 4 days even more interesting and exciting and drama-filled than they otherwise would have, and then you're turning them off. Like, if this was just a normal Final Four week, or if they didn't do the double eviction and this was a Final Five week, and we basically saw the double eviction situation play out, where Ty wins the HOH, nominates Beth and Tara, Brayden wins the veto, doesn't use it, yada yada. Like, losing that 4 days of content, it would have sucked, but it wouldn't have been as bad, right? Than losing what's going to be, like, insane, emotional, dramatic fallout. So it's just, whatever the reason they're doing this, it's completely misguided and just stupid for me.
I don't think there's really any argument against, I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head. So I guess that's disappointing, but I'm glad we covered it at the top. I guess could we kind of go through the first downfall of Jed?
Yes.
Potentially the only one.
Potentially the first, we might have a second if he comes back in another downfall. Or this could be like the second to last chapter in Jed's, like, victory story, which would be definitely a lot to talk about for us to how we digest if Jed ends up winning the season, for instance.
Yeah. So Ben, you're a Big Brother historian, I would say.
Yeah.
Has a player ever re-entered the game and won the game in the same season?
Not in North American Big Brother. I can't say for certain, other, like, not in US or Canada. Like, there might be other countries that are different formats where that has happened that I'm not aware of, because I'm not as tapped in as those shows.
Right.
It's gotten close. It's gotten the closest in Canada a number of times. BBCAN9, Gary should have theoretically won the game.
Right. Yeah.
Had the Topaz vote not happened, and he was somebody who was evicted and then re-entered the game at the Final Five. And you have BBCAN4, where Kelsey is evicted pre-jury, re-enters the game after another fake double eviction twist that was executed a little bit differently, executed worse. So this was actually the better executed fake double eviction out of the two in BBCAN.
I don't have a problem with the twist. I have a problem with not showing us the follow-up.
No, yeah. No, definitely not turning the feeds on and not showing the climactical part of the twist was way more egregious than the twist itself.
Right.
But yeah, Kelsey in that season was evicted, came back in after a fake double eviction, and made the final two, and theoretically could have won that jury vote if she hadn't, like, completely shat the bed in the jury questioning. And that's pretty much it. I don't think anybody else has gotten particularly close to winning after being evicted and coming back in. You could look at Victor Arroyo and BB18. You can look at Amy Cruz and BB3.
Some say
You could look
Victor's
at
still
James.
battling.
There's a number that get far and theoretically are in a position where they could win. Obviously, I think Gary is the most obvious example of somebody because he essentially should have won the game.
That sucks so much.
Yeah.
I don't want to go on a huge tangent.
No, yeah.
But that sucks. All right, cool. So it's possible, but
yeah, Cliff Hogg actually is somebody that could be comparable to a Jed. Somebody who kind of immediately revolving door.
Yeah, Johnny Mack kind of close,
Johnny Mack,
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
He ended up in 4th.
So, but like you said, and I guess it would be a similar situation with Jed, or revolving door. Like he barely left the house. He was in the HOH room most of the time.
Yeah.
So
he left the house for 45 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Which was actually really cool. I love seeing the back, behind, the curtain of the Big Brother house. It's really so sick. I had no idea that the HOH room was just around the corner there. It's so cool. Anyway, sorry. That's nerdy. Probably not what the people are here for, but
no, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about the destination though. Do you want to talk about the journey?
Yeah, let's go. So where do we start off here, Ben?
Well, all right. So we end the week of last week where the last thing that me and Chad talked about was after Kiefer had been blindsided and backdoored, he, as you mentioned, was able to talk himself out of being voted out.
Yeah.
Tina ends up getting voted out instead, and we end that eviction episode with Tara winning the final 6 HOH, winning her second comp in 2 weeks out of nowhere. She becomes the comp
beast.
queen. Yeah,
she's out here, Ben. She's out here doing it. I was certainly surprised, but I was like, man, this is the best case scenario for some juicy drama, and it delivered. It delivered.
Yeah, no, this is what you want in Big Brother is the people who are out of the power structure winning the HOH and then creating a situation where the power structure has to eat its own and crumble. And this is basically what Tara does. You can argue about her execution, which we will, because there's a lot of mistakes this week and everybody is culpable, and Tara definitely is culpable as well in making some silly decisions. But in terms of her winning the HOH and creating drama and creating a fun week, definitely what you want out of an endgame situation here.
Yeah, I think at one point you texted our group chat. You're like, everybody is throwing, every single player is throwing the game right now.
Yeah.
But
no, that
also, this is the kind of thing that we did not see one time in Big Brother 22. This is the thing that we were every week coming on to this show and being like, I wish something would happen. I wish the power would get away from this big alliance, and it just never happened. So Big Brother Canada 9 just delivering so hard.
Yeah. I think it really comes a lot down to comp design. I think comp design this season has been very unique in that potentially because of COVID, they've had a lot of comps that can kind of be won by anyone, and very few comps that are extremely physically demanding in terms of this is something that only a very strong dude would win, or this is a comp that only somebody with an insane amount of endurance could win. We haven't seen a wall comp. We haven't really seen any kind of endurance comp beyond the initial team comp thing and then the first HOH that Austin won. Those are pretty much the only endurance-style competitions we've seen. Everything else has been very mentally based, kind of puzzles, booth games, a lot of crapshoot style things, things that kind of require niche skills. So definitely that contributes.
Yeah, I think we're both probably on the record on this show talking about we would love it if every challenge was a crapshoot. We're not here for the comp prowess. We're here for the drama, and enabling anybody to win a challenge is what brings the drama, as we saw this week. So I guess, should we get to her nominations?
Yeah, I mean, well, we start the week after Tara wins The Monday episode primarily is focused around Beth. Kind of like we kind of see a turn here where Beth is being set up as like the villain slash anti-villain of this season of the Endgame, where her ego, as you kind of put, as you know, you're out on Beth now, is kind of become completely unchecked to the point where she thinks that she can control Tara's HOH. And so she pitches to Tara this idea of trying to set up a fake backdoor on Jed that Tara would think is real by getting Ty and Brayden to nominate themselves or to volunteer to be nominated. And Brayden very much says in the diary room he would never volunteer to be nominated or agree to be nominated. Never. That's not something that Brayden would do.
Thank God. Thank God.
Yeah. Thank God Brayden has more sense than that. And so obviously Beth pitches this plan to Tara, and Tara is like, "Nah, it's not happening."
You know what? And it's great that Tara's going to stick to her guns this whole time, and
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. She wants Jed out. Jed is her primary target this week, and she talks to Kiefer basically about like who should she put up next to Jed, Ty or Beth, and they eventually land on Beth, partially because of the absolute audacity for her to think she could pitch this kind of a plan to Tara. And so, yeah, we end up with Jed and Beth on the block, leaving Ty as the last person in the game to not be nominated. So, good for Ty.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome, yeah.
Yep. Still to this point, he was not nominated in the double because he was HOH. So, even to this point, at the final 4/5, he has yet to be nominated, which is an impressive statistic.
Oh, no, absolutely. Low-key, like, playing a really great and clean game out here, so...
I mean, not clean, but, like, it depends what definition of clean you're using.
I mean, in the sense that it's, like, nobody's like, oh, Ty's a huge threat, we need to get him out,
Yeah.
That's kind of what I meant, like Teflon type, you can do stuff, but nothing stays on, which is kind of where you want to be, especially this late in the game. But, obviously Ty takes Beth volunteering him to volunteer for the block very well.
Definitely does not contribute to him kind of reevaluating his position within the sauce at all and having conversations with Kiefer that pulls him away from that trio towards more alternative endgame possibilities. Definitely not.
It's really good. Beth and Jed have played the last 2 weeks great. They had two people who would never betray them because of their actions towards them. So, just really solid gameplay from two players that at one point it kind of looked like they were going to cakewalk right to the final two together. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, it's still possible.
Sure. Of course.
Despite all of their mistakes and because of those twists, it is still possible. Potentially even, I would say, likely. But we'll get to that in the speculation part of the podcast. Ty even vocalizes this during the double eviction episode when he compares it to being cheated on. You just can't trust somebody after that.
That's fair. I think that's fair. I think So one of my golden rules in the LRG scene is when somebody votes for you, you can work with them, but you need to keep them at best at arm's length and be working to get them out, because one of the hardest things to do is if a Survivor one is to write someone's name down and be I want this person out. But once someone does it once, it's easy to do it again, and so I think that's just getting over that mental hurdle of betraying someone or voting for someone is the hard part. And once someone does it, they're going to do it again. So it is kind of someone cheating on somebody. It's okay, can you trust them fully again? Or is that, forever broken? What are your kind of feelings as someone who watches and has played games like this in the past?
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely think I I usually am more kind of utilitarian about like alliances,
Mm,
especially when you're in like kind of a situation that demands it, where you don't have the as many options. So, for instance, like Braden has been very utilitarian in the alliances he's formed,
mm-hmm,
where Kiefer has had a big hand of taking out like all of his closest allies, but him and Kiefer are working relatively closely right now because
mm.
Braden has very few other options because all of his allies got taken out by Kiefer.
Right.
Um, so I think that if you have better options, it's definitely correct to not put trust in people who have shown that they are not really deserving of your trust because of
Yeah.
actions that they've taken. And like you said, it's kind of like they've broken the seal of disloyalty with you. So
Mm,
like at that point, you can't ever fully trust them again. Like there may be circumstances where your interests align in the short term, and so you can continue to work with them on that basis. But in terms of like trusting them fully, in terms of getting to the end with them or anything like that,
mm.
yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. No, I agree. So I guess we can kind of like talk. Jed and obviously Beth get nominated, um, which is not surprising. But what surprised me was they've been very much dominating the game, and I alluded to this earlier, and they've been the ones doing this to other people. And one of my like least favorite things in the show is like the self righteousness of people who go from being in power to being like, on the bottom of the social hierarchy because of like their actions that they did when they were in power. Like I just hate that, Ben. I hate that attitude. Like, how dare you do this thing I've been doing to everyone else to me? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that that's been kind of what they've done. Especially, I think Beth has been the most egregious example of that, like, as you
Mm,
mentioned, the last week or two, of really kind of it. It's okay when I do it, or like yeah, it's like how dare you feed me my own medicine back to me,
mm,
right? Yeah, it's not the most fun to watch, and it definitely is frustrating and infuriating. And uh, it I picked Beth to win the game in the preseason. All right,
mm.
I do stand by that. I think it's a very good pick. I think she has still a
No,
very
I
good
think I think
chance
it's
to
a
win the
great
game.
pick. We heard the jury. The
Um,
jury don't like her, but they respect her, and that's all that
yeah,
matters.
yeah,
She doesn't need to
and
be friends with these people when she goes home.
right. No, I agree. I understand though why people, for the most part, like the fan base is not liking Beth and hasn't liked Beth for a while now. There's definitely like she definitely leaves a lot to be desired in terms of like creating a likable personality that you want to root for.
Mm.
And the show is very much leaning into this, where
Now,
like
yeah, they really are.
they're like, yeah, I mean, Beth's the villain. Like, will that potentially create backlash if Beth ends up winning the game? Maybe. I think that people, at least hopefully, will acknowledge that she is like a really solid player,
Mm-hmm.
at least as far as this cast goes.
Yeah.
She's definitely way, 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 way higher on her own game than is, I would say, accurate to any degree. But that doesn't mean that she is not playing like relatively effectively, and she is one of the more self-interested players, I would say, in the game. I think Ty at this point is probably the most self-interested,
Mm.
and Beth is probably second, maybe like just ahead of Kiefer, um, because she definitely immediately after these nominations starts considering whether or not voting out Jed is correct for her. Like that's
Mm.
not something that she completely puts out of her mind immediately. Like it's something that she works through, and you can see it has an emotional toll on her. But that doesn't stop her from at least exercising that strategic option, right?
No, yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone would have blamed her personally, but I do see the value in her not voting for Bray. Because does anyone call him Bray or is it just Braden? I
I
like,
it's either way, it's fine.
all right. So, like, I do see the value for her being like, okay, Jed's going out. There's nothing I can do. I can at least perhaps salvage this relationship.
Right.
I'm still in the game. I'm still playing. Like, so when she voted for Jed, I was like, that's surprising. But the more I thought about it, I was like, but it's not a bad decision, and I respect that.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, and I mean, you could definitely tell that she was like struggling
Oh,
with
she was
doing that
torn
at the
up. Yeah.
moment. Yeah, like she was like it was like she was like basically like on the verge of completely breaking down as
Yeah, it
she
was
did
a
it.
teary voting
Oh yeah,
segment.
like I mean, if Jed wasn't 100% sure he was going before, like when every single person, like all of his allies, are like on the verge of breakdowns, like emotional breakdowns, you can pretty much tell that they're voting you out. Like
Yeah.
obviously he knew already, but like, come on.
Wow, they must really like Braden.
Yeah, I didn't know they had that kind of a connection to him. Like it's a little extra.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
man.
no, but yeah, I do think like obviously if and when Jed comes back into the game from this twist, uh, Beth voting against him is not going to change his strategic decisions. Like Jed is immediately going back to Beth. Beth is the only one who put up any sort of resistance to him getting voted out, and like gave him a heads up and fought for him to potentially stay. And so yeah, like it doesn't hurt her with Jed at all, and it can only help her potentially with Braden. So it is probably correct. But yeah, before we get there.
Yeah, this is gonna be the thumbnail, so we got to talk about this.
Yeah,
Then.
photos taken moments before disaster.
Oh man.
We get to our Expedia-themed Power of Veto competition. What a time for a sponsored veto.
Yeah. I actually did like this one.
Yeah,
It was fun. It was different. Like
high-stage puzzle.
the three separate puzzles. Jed did great. Obviously, he won the veto, but I thought this was really fun. And I thought it'd be really fun to do. One thing I thought would be funny is like how in the past they've had non-Canadians on the show. It would have been hilarious to watch like an American like me try to put together a map of Canada and label all the major cities.
Well, to be fair, that is a copy of a map that exists in the house in the Expedia room that they could have been studying, and they talk about having studied, that Jen talked about having studied. So, it's not like you wouldn't have had the resources to know the answer, right?
True.
Yeah. But still, probably a lot easier if you are Canadian and are familiar with the geography a little bit.
I'm not 100% sure I could do an American version of this either, to be fair. So, like, let's not lie here. Like, I would have struggled if this was an American or a Canadian map.
Yeah. I mean, it did look like a hard puzzle either way. Like, it was definitely like the way the pegs kind of worked. It seemed very like it wasn't like a normal puzzle where you can kind of move and like shift it around. You have to know exactly where it goes so you can put it into the pegs.
Yeah, and like Ty was like, I'm gonna make the logo first, and at first I was like, that's a good idea, and I was like, unless you're making it in the wrong place, that is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely potentially one you could like kind of solve on the floor or on the table a little bit first, and then kind of put up onto the wall. But yeah, we had that, and then the first part was like a logic puzzle with the suitcases, and the second part was like a rush hour slide puzzle thing, which is pretty fun. Yeah, definitely a unique challenge. You usually don't see like this kind of like multi-tiered advanced like puzzle style challenge on the American version. No. Usually it's like if there's a puzzle component, there's like a physical component for the first half and then the puzzle component for the second half, or like it's kind of combined where you have to like run back and forth across a balance beam or like on a zip line or something. So yeah.
No, I liked it. I thought it was good. And yeah, Ty did well, but Jed killed it. He killed that comp.
Yeah, I mean, you would think, this is actually relevant that it was an individually timed comp because in a perfect world for the sauce, if they assume that the three of them are loyal, the best person to win this comp is Ty, right? And then Ty can take one of Jed or Beth off the block, presumably Jed, and force either Braden or Kiefer up, and then they'll have the votes to vote that person out instead of the other.
Right.
So the fact that it was individually timed meant that it wasn't as like throwable to somebody like Ty, which means that we get a situation where Jed wins the veto on the block and Ty becomes a potential replacement nominee. So.
Right. Yeah, that was good. It was really good. So,
obviously Jed is going to save himself.
Yeah. So Ben, man, I cannot see myself as a juror voting for someone who doesn't play the veto on themselves when they're on the block. What do you think about that?
I think if it worked and Braden was voted out, I think that Jed gets a lot of credit for making this ballsy move and having it work and having all of the Sunsetters stay and Braden go on Tara's HOH. I think that looks way, way worse on Tara than it does on Jed. I think a lot of that, a lot of the, it's kind of like, is this dumb or is it dumb enough to work? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that if Jed doesn't get voted out here, then that could be the case. I think that now that Jed has made that move, gotten voted out, potentially can come back into the game, and then we'll see what he does with the rest of the game. I think at this point, as a juror, I would have a lot of trouble voting for him over anybody except maybe Braden. I think that I would probably vote for Ty Kiefer and Beth over him at this point if he were to come back in.
It's hard to be like, oh yeah, you deserve to win even though you lost and you got bailed out by a twist. You know?
Not only just lost because say Beth had won the veto, right, taking herself down, and then Jed gets voted out. That doesn't doesn't look as bad if he comes back in. But the fact that he made such an egregious move that got himself voted out by his closest allies, and then has to get bailed out by a twist to come back in. If he does end up in the final two, I think that really is going to make a lot of people take huge pause before even considering whether they should vote for him to win the game.
Yeah. So Jed gets voted off. Everyone cries. Kiefer can't even look at the camera, when he's trying to cast his vote. And then we have the fake double eviction, which was interesting. And Ty, again, coming on hot late game. Kill it. He won a veto recently. He's won this HOH. He placed well in the veto last time. And, yeah, I was very impressed with his day knowledge. Got all the questions right. That was good.
Yeah, it's interesting that Kiefer, who had won the previous double eviction HOH, which was also a booth days knowledge thing, that he got every question right on. Here he actually ends up in 4th out of 4 players, where both Braden and Beth also end up with. I think Ty ends up getting all of them right. Braden and Beth each get 1 wrong, and I think Kiefer got 2 wrong. So
that sounds right to me.
So it's interesting here that Kiefer, who had previously been doing very well in these days comp, ends up doing the worst. Do you think he threw this?
I think it's possible. Because he was close. That's the thing that makes it hard. Beth's wrong answer was so wrong that, if it was she was throwing it, I would have been yeah, obviously she was so far off. But I think Kiefer was, off by 1 day both times.
Yeah.
So that could just be, in your head, mess up. But it could also be oh, I know this, but I want to throw. So what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that, presumably, Tara is watching the comp from the sidelines, and so he doesn't want to make it look if he were to be throwing it, he doesn't want to look super egregious to her. I think that it's reasonable for him to throw this because I don't think that he was going home in almost any circumstance. I think that Ty is a bigger threat than him at this point between him and Ty. And he feels confident, I think, that both Ty and Braden would target Beth and Tara, with, as we are going to find out, Tara being the primary target there for those 3. So I think that other than very niche veto outcomes, it's very unlikely that he is in any sort of danger at this vote. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he throws here, especially because this is the final five. They think this is the final five HOH, which is historically a bad one to win because it's better to win at the final four because then you can still play in the final HOH. Whereas at the final five, if you win that HOH and make a move, now you become the prime rib target at the final four, where you can't play in the HOH, you can only play in the veto. So if that were to be the case, I think that it makes sense that Kiefer wants to kind of take a step back, make Ty be the one to take this shot, and now Ty is theoretically the target at the final four if, in this circumstance, without a returning player, Beth were to win the final four HOH.
Yeah, no, we've definitely talked about it in the past, round 6-4. Really, the veto is the big power here. The HOH is just safety and then hoping your plan works out. Because really, at this point, everyone should be playing for themselves, and the power of the HOH, isn't. There's no mystique to it, really.
Yeah.
Everyone's so acquainted to the game at this point, and probably not nervous to make moves. Hopefully, that's the case. But yeah. What about this veto competition? You like this?
I mean, in theory, this could be an interesting competition, right? I think it's misplaced for a double eviction to do a comp like this, which I assume probably lasted because for those listeners who don't know, the double evictions and the evictions in Big Brother Canada are not actually live; they're live to tape, and there is editing that goes on. So it seems like this veto comp probably lasted way longer than was aired. There was a lot of really awkward jump cuts in the veto where it seemed like people were progressing through the comp way faster than it looked like they were actually moving. So it was just very difficult to follow. The camera angle was super weird that they were using. And then it just kind of cut to Brayden running to the button and then Beth following to the button behind him. It's oh, okay, I guess the comp is over. So
yeah, it was really it was to the point where I was like, do they even need to untie knots? The slack seemed to be there if it was that fast. But yeah, no, that's a great point. It's not live, so it probably lasted a lot longer. Yeah,
so definitely I obviously Clown Shoe comp is really overused. But I feel something like that probably would have been a little bit better because this is kind of a similar sort of approach, but the Clown Shoe comp is a lot easier to follow. And they've used
it.
We
already have a pre-made ball pit this season.
That's true. Yeah,
we're waiting for
it would have been aesthetically, it would have aesthetically made sense. But yeah. So I mean, I didn't love the comp, but I don't. It's not really. I have way more complaints about the episode than the veto comp kind of sucked. You know what I mean? So
yeah, not that it really matters. Brayden won, so good for him.
His first comp win of the season.
First win, yeah. So hey, big ups. He didn't change the nominations. And when I was watching it, I haven't not watched feeds or anything. I'm like, oh, this will probably be Beth. It makes sense. They just sent Jed out, end the whole bloodline, if you will, of this and just move on with the game. But they went Tara. Ben, can you fill me in? What the hell did I miss?
Well, before that, do you want to talk about whether you think Brayden made the correct decision with the veto?
I mean, if he has a final three with the two other guys, yeah, I guess.
Well,
but if he doesn't, then no, because I thought him and Tara were at least working with each other, and I guess not.
No, that is true, and Tara was working loosely with Kiefer and Brayden as well, and it is true that those three guys do have a loose agreement for the three of them to go to the final three. But is that a position that Brayden should want to be in?
Nothing so far has shown me that Brayden's particularly great at Big Brother.
Okay,
so,
all right. Look, I'm not talking about all right, I'm not saying is Brayden, a strategic mastermind or whatever. I'm saying like in a perfect world, in Braden's position, if he were playing optimally, would using the veto be better?
I mean, if he felt like he could dictate Tara's vote, then he can control the vote and get the outcome he wants between Kiefer and Beth staying.
Mhm.
He's just not that type of player, so it's hard to like put these, things onto him. You know
No,
what I
of
mean?
course. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm saying like yeah, obviously with the decision he made, he's losing the game 100%. Like everybody, I think at this point, everybody except for Braden can win. I think even Jed and potentially even Tara coming back in can win the game at this point. Braden has a 0% chance to win. And a lot of it does come down to the fact that he has basically just existed as an entity in this game for 8 weeks and done nothing. Like I gave Braden a
Yeah,
fair
it
shake.
sounds mean, but it's true.
Yeah, I gave
Like,
Braden a fair shake, especially after Austin was evicted. He is a very effective social player. He's very likable. He's very good at getting people to want to work with him. But as far as like strategic decision making goes, as far as him like broadcasting an end game that he can actually win in, it's just not there at all. Like there's nothing there. And I like
I'm
Braden.
glad you're
He's
saying this because it makes me feel better. Like when I was like, I don't think he's a good enough player to put this on. I was like, is that too
yeah.
mean? Am I like sounding really bitchy right now? But I'm glad that you're on the same page with this.
No, yeah, no. I wasn't ever insinuating that like this was some like a move that I expected Braden to make, right? It's just like in a perfect world, if everybody's playing optimally towards their best chance to win the season,
Yeah.
in my opinion, Braden's best final two is against Tara,
I
and
agree.
uh, they don't see it that way, which we'll talk about. And I think that Braden thinks that he might be able to beat Ty in the end, which I don't think is at all true. And so, in his mind, his best case scenario is going to a final three with Kiefer and Ty, having one of them win the HOH and cut each other. And he's playing a great game to like walk away with 20 grand, which might be his ceiling at this point, regardless. So we'll see. But yeah, I think that the move, if Braden is playing as hard as he can to win the season, is pull down Tara, tell her to vote out Kiefer. Or even Beth.
I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair. But he doesn't have the killer instinct, man.
No, for sure. No, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like I said, he's not winning the season. It's just like hypotheticals.
Yeah. So, okay. So I guess that clears up a lot because, like, on paper, saving Tara is the move for Braden. And even for me, like, playing it out. And I don't know if now that they see that Jed has a chance to come back, if Kiefer and Ty were like, shit, we, like, messed up. We should have gotten rid of Beth. But,
Yep.
hindsight's 2020, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Tara gets voted off, and she was very broken up about it, which understandably so.
Yep, for sure. Definitely the two people that she thought that she had been working with at that point were the two people who cast the votes to evict her. And yeah, so you're saying like you don't understand why they voted out Tara over Beth, right?
Yeah, for either of them, if I'm Kiefer, I want to be in the final three with Tara and Braden. If I'm Braden, I want to be in the final two with Tara, but also probably with Kiefer because I don't think he's good at comps, but like Ty scares me as an endgame threat more than Kiefer if I'm Braden. I don't necessarily want Beth anywhere near the finals because there's a chance that a lot of the moves her and Jed made together are now entirely transferred onto her in terms of ownership, since Jed's going to be in the jury house, pumping up Beth, like being like, oh, Beth actually did this and that, and anything like you think I did was partially facilitated by Beth, I think that's incredibly dangerous to have someone in the house who has like a cheerleader in the jury house. So like Beth is someone I would not want around, like personally. So for me, I was like, this is a no-brainer. But apparently, I'm wrong.
No, yeah, this is something that we even saw during the week, or during this past week, with, in particular, Kiefer and Ty, very much underestimating Beth's ability to win this game. Mm-hmm. And you can see with Kiefer pulling off of this move, and Ty also was helping him to get Jed to use the veto on Beth so that they can take Jed out. They probably would be better off if they had evicted Beth over Jed even, just because there's way more malleability with Jed. He is more an emotional player than she is. She is definitely more self-interested. Jed is closer to both Kiefer and Ty socially. And now with Jed out of the game, Beth is way more on her own than Jed would have been if Beth had left the game. And so, yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to they don't think that Beth can win endgame comps, which may or may not be true. We're going to end up seeing that. She only has won the one HOH this season, whereas Jed has definitely been stronger in comps. And even Tara in the last couple of weeks has shown that she's no slouch in these endgame comps. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the main reasons. And the other thing is they're very much underestimating her ability to win a jury vote. And after Tara especially is the one who might end up getting a lot of the credit for taking Jed out, who is seen as the front runner for the game from a perception perspective. They see Tara as gaining a lot of jury points, and they see Beth as somebody that everybody in the jury socially hates, which is to an extent true. But as you mentioned in the jury segment that we did see, the jury doesn't particularly like Beth as a person, but they respected the game that she's been playing.
Yeah. Which props to them for being able to put aside their, dislike of her as a person, because that's hard. We've seen plenty of juries just not be able to do that at all, which is fair and which is within their rights, but I know I prefer it when people are like, yeah, I don't like them, but they played the best game, so I'm going to vote for them to win.
Yeah, and so that's pretty much what's going to set them up for this decision. This is the decision that Ty and Kiefer had been talking about since around Tuesday. On Tuesday, they had agreed that definitely, or by Tuesday, they had agreed that definitely if either of them won the next HOH, the nom should be Tara and Beth. And at first, their initial idea was to vote Beth out, but after they talked it through, they went over these pros and cons. They decided, I think, on Tuesday night that they think that it would be better for them to take Tara out next instead of Beth. So, okay. I don't know. There was a lot of people I saw on Twitter, Reddit, and social media or whatever who were very surprised that this was the outcome. I think there were actually some fake spoilers that Beth was the second person evicted in the fake double, which might have contributed to that. But this was 100% something that Ty and Kiefer had gone over. And the most recent plan that they had discussed on the feeds was taking Tara out. So,
yeah. So it makes I don't know how to put it. For us, if you don't watch the feeds, it seems so obvious to vote Beth out. But like you said, they had already decided this, so it's not a surprise to you that it went down this way. I guess. Ben, who do you think's going to win the buyback comp?
Well, all right. So, yeah, just to close that out, obviously, on paper, with perfect information, voting out Beth was better, right? Yeah. Because of the fake eviction buyback comp, because their read of the jury is wrong, because the comps aren't necessarily as important as they're putting as much into. But yeah, beyond that, we now have Jed and Tara facing off in the backyard. They have the reveal to the house guests at the end of the episode, and they are, Beth is very happy, but you can see Ty looks like he's about to shit himself. Kiefer looks like he's about to start crying again. Yeah. Presumably because you're like, oh no, Jed's about to come back into the game after he just did that to him.
If it isn't the consequences of my own actions.
Yeah. So yeah, we see the start or the setup for the comp, and they're on this ramp thing with balls. I assume it's some sort of rolling a ball into a divot style competition. So I think that's relative. That's as far as comps go, that could be close to 50-50 between Jed and Tara. This is probably one of them. Like we saw Tara in the veto she won, the last part that she played against Tina was this kind of like bouncing balls on this like thingies, whatever, and they call her like Trick Shot Tara now because she like was able to pull off this like ball bouncing thing. So like, you know, she's shown at least a level of competency with something similar to this.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that it's like headed in. We were like, oh, it's probably going to be Jed versus Tara, or maybe Jed versus Beth, or something like that. Those are the most likely outcomes, and Jed should be heavily favored in most comps against both of them, right? I think this is probably like 60-40. So
yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any like reason that jumps off for me as to why Tara can't win this.
yeah.
I mean, I think there is a little bit to be said about getting voted off, like even like an hour before Tara did, like being able to kind of mentally be like, okay, I'm out, but I have this chance to come back in, whereas Tara was very frazzled by her eviction, which I think it's hard to get right back into the mindset of like, okay, I'm gonna win a comp right now, but other than that.
And even beyond the hour, Jed had known that he was going to get evicted for like several hours before the eviction. Like he had been told ahead of time. Like he came into the eviction knowing that he was going to be going. So he had a number of hours to, you know, accept that was happening to him, to, you know, process it emotionally, to decompress a little bit. Whereas with Tara, she is going straight from being like absolutely sniped by the only two people in the game that she thought she had anything going with, to like 5 minutes later playing a comp against the guy who is like one of the strongest competitors of the season. So yeah, not necessarily the best from like a mental perspective for Tara. I agree. That's probably the biggest factor here that would make me lean towards Jed being the more likely person to win.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, well, it's not really any feed spoilers to talk about. There's not really, but I think we covered a lot. This is great. It was great to be back, man. It's great to be here in the Have Not room with you again. Chad will be back next week, and it'll be all three of us, which will be the first time in quite a while. And we'll have a lot more to talk about because we'll have seen, I don't know if a lot more, but we'll have stuff to talk about this, and we'll be able to lament missing out on all the drama. And I mean, other than that, Ben, where can they find you online?
Yeah, you can follow me on social media at Ben Sharon. It's right here. And you can see my my passive aggressive, or maybe not even passive aggressive, tweet about this feed out. This pretty hourly aggressive tweet about this this feed outage situation on there.
So follow Ben on there. Also, check him out on Twitch at twitch.tv/wickedgoodeverything. Plays Among Us Thursdays, so if you like social strategy games, you'll love that stream. And with some other familiar faces on there. Sometimes me. Every once in a while me. But a lot of people from Wicked Good Sports are over there each time. You can follow the channel on Better Radio at YouTube. Just search Better Radio. The main channel is youtube.com/wickedgoodeverything. We have a Twitter at WGEverything, and Instagram at WickedGoodEverything, a TikTok, search WickedGoodEverything, and my Twitter is at TheFakeBMar, which is somewhere, I don't know, Tamar made the thing. Sometimes things are reversed. It's down there. You can see it on the screen. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast this whole season. I know Ben and Chad have been killing it, and they've been like doing it. When I've been on it, I've enjoyed doing it. So, other than that, check out our Circle podcast, Influencer Chat, which in real time we're about to start recording. We recap each batch that the Circle comes out with. So each 4 episodes. So if you've somehow not heard enough of our voices, check us out on there. Got anything you want to add before we get on out of here?
No, I'm excited. I only got a couple weeks left of the season, so we'll have the season wrapping up in 2 weeks now. So
it's crazy. Time flies.
Yep.
All right. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.